Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Black Baseball Mixtape. I am your host, Cheats. As always, BBM is brought to you by the Family Podcast Network. As I've mentioned the last couple of episodes, I'm so excited to share with all of you, thanks to you and your support of the podcast, we are now charting in the top 100 of baseball podcasts under the Apple umbrella. We're in, we're out, we're in, we're out. So with even more support, we'll stay in the top 100, which is an amazing feat for somebody that's not affiliated. We're not affiliated with the big networks. We're not affiliated with any of the big media companies that usually host podcasts. Not yet. You know, we can be one day, hopefully. But because of you and your direct involvement with this project, we are charting in the top 100. So I ask that you please continue to support that, share it with your friends. Today's podcast is one that I've been trying to cultivate for a minute. I'm so excited about it because if you talk about Black baseball, you talk about minority baseball, youth development, building the game, future generations, you can't not talk about what's happening with the minority baseball prospect. I'm so excited to welcome the founder and CEO, Alex Wyche. Coach Wyche, welcome to the mixtape.
Hey man, what's going on? How you doing today?
I'm excited to have you, brother, and I am in awe of what you're doing, what you've built, and what you continue to build because it's so vital and so needed. One of the first question I'm going to ask you is because for people that don't know the history, they don't know the resume, Coach, you built a damn near historic program in what, less than a decade in Atlanta, Georgia. And you have,
For sure.
I'm talking minority players, I'm talking championships. It is an amazing history. And if anybody's looking at you on YouTube, they can tell you're a young man. You're not
For
you're
sure.
not a man that could that that you still have a lot of meat on the bones in coaching. Tell us why you decided to take up this project. Tell us about the origins of the minority baseball prospects and how you got from being, a coach that was building a very strong resume to where you are right now.
Yeah, man. One thing I want to say, man, I've just been blessed through my journey. Redan High School was a blessing of mine. To be honest, man, Redan been a powerhouse, man, for the last 40 years, starting with the godfather of black baseball in Atlanta, man, a guy named Greg Goodwin. He started the MVP program that helped, promote the breakthrough series and things like that, man. So, shout out to Greg Goodwin, man, who really, catapulted that Redan program. When you talk about Dominic Brown, Phillies All-Star, you talk about the most legendary guy from one of my close friends, man, Brandon Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and since the late 80s, man, they've been one of the top, well, been the top black baseball school in the country. And I've been there, man. I was there for 6 years. Every kid signed. Over 6 draft picks, man. I had my first guy from Redan to be in the big leagues. Hopefully this year, a guy named Taj Bradley, minor league pitcher of the year 2 years ago.
Tampa Bay
So
Rays
man,
organization. Yep.
hey man, Tampa Bay Rays, man, came in and scooped Todd Bradley, man, the youngest kid in the draft, man, 4 years ago, man. So I just was blessed, man, to have opportunity to be at Redan High School. And, being in Atlanta really was, when COVID hit, was the mecca of black baseball. And just having guys and things going on. So, when COVID hit, I got a chance to really sit down, right, and think about, hey, how can I really impact the game and not just help out one school, right? So, when you talk about East Coast Pro, you talk about area code, everything had to come to Atlanta, and I was like, hey, it wasn't nothing going on but perfect game and me filming guys, right, trying to create this platform. And who is better to create a platform like this and a guy who's been on the ground level? Right.
Absolutely.
I'm not a guy who's been in the office. I'm not a guy who played big league ball. My whole career has been coaching high school kids in Title IX schools. And when we talk about Title IX schools, those are kids who, mostly on reduced lunch, man, and poverty neighborhood. So, and I'm producing, future big leaguers, draft picks, the most drafted players out of any high school. If I can do that, it's nothing for me to create a platform, to support everybody in the world, and give them that same type of support system. So when COVID hit, we had some top draft picks with Tamar and Drew. And I said, bump it, man. Let's start promoting these guys on social media, which me being a teacher for 13 years, understanding how the kids, brain works is social media, right? So
Absolutely.
once I started posting kids, and when nothing for people to see, man, but baseball, that perfect game post and what minority baseball post, I knew that I really had something. And, our first All-American game, it was just on a whim, man. Shout out, I know you had Mike Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Had Mike Sanders on the podcast earlier, man. He came in and supported my vision, man. And my first year we did it in Mobile, Alabama, man. And I just knew it was going to be a hit when I walked into my first meeting with, some of these top players. And the first people I see was CC Sabathia and Andrew Jones Jr. And I'm like, hey, it's the heart of COVID, man. And I got all these top players and their parents here, man. I know I got it, man. So since then, man, what we did with minority baseball prospects is use everything that, I really learned through this journey of, being one of the top baseball coaches in the country, just seeing what minorities need, man, and put together events around the country.
There's one thing to kind of start the process, right? There's one thing to start the process, but I want to go back to that vision. And because I can only imagine there is nothing like grinding every year to put a successful, historic team on the field with all the legacy that you mentioned, all the history. So that is all consuming. COVID hits. Sure. And then when did the vision start for you to say, I need to do something bigger? I'm the guy that needs to do something bigger.
Just being a guy who believed on the best in the world to do whatever I wanted to do, right? I wasn't really scared to do anything. And just seeing these big corporations come in and not use our kids, but try to spotlight minorities in the game. Who would be
you can say it. Look. I'm a fan and friend of corporations as well. But you can say that there's some level of exploitation, right? When you have the culture, they're investing so they can put the culture in their product, or vice versa, right?
I agree. So why would I let a corporation come in and do that when I know I got to? When you're a high school coach, man, you're not getting paid much, and the only thing you really have, is the love for the kids. Right. And I know nobody really loves kids more than I do. So, with my mind frame, I just felt like, hey, who's a better person to do it than me, man? And then, that COVID year, man, I had 12 kids sign that year. That was my best, one of my best teams, and I got cut short, man, during COVID, man.
Oh man.
Yeah, we like 10-1, man. So I was sick. So I was just sitting at home and just thinking and pondering of, hey, how can I really change the world? It's cool to be the best high school coach and touch 12, but how can I really change the world of baseball around the country, and then use this game of baseball to really change the way the landscape of our culture, man. Baseball was a pillar in the Black culture, man, with the Negro Leagues, and when events came into different cities, it was like the fair, man. Everybody that was in the Black culture knew they was gonna eat, from hotels to eateries, to the whole city, man. So, with minority baseball process, we want to piggyback off that, man. So everywhere we go, we want to change the culture. And as we continue to grow in funding and things like that, man, me being a teacher, man, I know that the change start with education also, man. So we got a whole mind frame of changing the world of what we really want to do to not just change the world of baseball, but change our economy and our Black culture.
And how do you go about doing that? And what I mean by that, Coach, is if somebody that wasn't familiar with minority baseball and what you're doing, and they asked you, Coach, what's the goal? What's the goal right now as you go around the country? You're highlighting some of the best Black players especially at the amateur levels and the youth levels in the country. If somebody was to say, Coach Weiss, I see what you're doing, man, but what's the goal? What do you say to that?
Man, when people ask me what's the goal, it's two spectrums of what I really want to do. The higher level is change it like the Negro Leagues, man. When we go to cities and different states, man, be that staple for these communities, so they can have that economic, powers when we come into that city, and then on the lower end, create some type of educational system where we can use baseball and other sports activities to really change the mindset of our black kids, man, and use minority baseball prospects as a pipeline where one, we got the bottom level where we can impact the great kids. And then we using, the system that we use, we already got the top players and then moving into the HBCUs, use the HBCUs as our powers, to change the pro side, right? Mm-hmm. So we got a whole system of what we really want to do to really change the system. We don't want to fit into the system. We want to change the entire system.
Coach, you know the game and you know the culture. When people ask you, because I know you get asked a million times, what is the biggest challenges? What are the biggest barriers for our people playing the game?
For me, just being on the ground level, for me, it's the fundamentals. Right. We always talk about the fun of the game and things like that, but black and minorities in the U.S. Don't tend to play baseball past middle school because it gets really hard. Right. So it's different with the basketball and the football. Athleticism can really take over and we can find success. But once we lose that fundamental priors at a certain age, and the bases get longer, people throwing harder, and different things in that manner, it's a really difficult game, man. So, that's the biggest thing that I see with the growth in the game is that we're not learning at a high level at the bottom, right? The park's not there anymore, mm-hmm. Right? We don't have 50 teams at the park. We got 1 and 2 teams. And then, we talk about travel ball. Did travel ball help or did it hurt? I think in some ways it helped, in some ways it hurt, right? Just on a separation of skill level, right? Did daddy ball help when we was when we was playing in little league? Mm-hmm. I think it hurt. My dad was a coach. One of my coaches, did he know baseball? Not for real, right? Was he a good person and loved kids? Correct. But did I learn those fundamental, traits that I needed to be successful at a higher level early? No. I learned those once I got into, higher level travel ball into college, mm-hmm. Right? And I could have gave up. Like most of my friends ended up playing other sports, but those fundamentals were really important, man. So, again, when you talk about those goals, man, and going around, man, that's one of the biggest things that we really want to do is harp on those fundamentals and touch those kids as early as possible.
Absolutely. No doubt. When did it become real for you? From vision to execution to a whole nother level. Now I'm talking about the level that you're at now, where you look around and you're all over the country looking at some of the best minority black players in the country. If you post great players on social media, they benefit from it. It's a whole kind of cycle now. So when did the flip switch for you? Not just from confidence in yourself, not just from vision, but to like, yo, we got it. We got something going on right now.
Yep. Really, man, like I said, once I did that first All-American game, mm-hmm. and I seen all those great players come down to Mobile, I felt it was a duty that it just like, when you talk about killing perfect game, can't kill perfect game because if it kills, it destroys the whole industry. And mm-hmm. that's how I feel at this point where we're at now. You stop minority baseball prospects, the kids lose hope. Mm-hmm. I feel like we're the hope for the kid. It's different when you getting DMs every day, and when you go into like we're in Houston right now for the Astros Foundation, Cactus Jack. tournament, man. And when we walk in and we do visions for these kids and do highlights for these kids, everybody wants to be in our HBCU game. Everybody wants to be highlighted by us, right? So again, man, after that first year, man, it wasn't no turning back. It was like, how can we continue to grow and kind of build every year, man? Because this is my life. My staff, I brought in my president, Reginald Hollins, used to be the head coach of Tuskegee. This is their life. These are these guys' life dreams of creating opportunities for minorities in the game of baseball, man. So it was just like, our life work came to this right here, man. So we felt like kids around the world is depending on us. So we just got to continue to grow, man.
Coach, where does the vision grow? Talk to me 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Where do you see minority baseball prospects? And I know there's a softball side as well.
Yeah, man, it's growing so fast, man. And you got to understand, we really did it without any outside funding. You know, most of this funding came from me. Just giving everything that I had to make sure that we're, continually to grow and make sure everybody else in our team ate, man. So when you talk about our vision, it's hard because every year is growing so rapidly and so fast. Like you say, this year we're adding softball, and that's a whole different lane that really haven't been touched. But our ultimate goal is to really control the market. In a couple months, you'll see a website where you'll get a chance to type in any minority kid in the country, and on minority baseball prospects, minority softball prospects, you'll be able to see those kids' profiles, and they'll be able to upload videos, to that website. So it is going to be easier because we know that HBCUs don't have that budget to go see every kid. So we want to be that middle person, right? To make sure these guys are successful and they can compete with Power Fives. That's the only way. But when you talk about 5 years, 10 years, the biggest thing is owning our own fields, and empower Black cities like Atlanta, Chicago, Alabama, Louisiana, different New Orleans. We're gonna make sure we own our own fields because we understand that land is power. Nobody can tell us that we can't have an event on this field if we own it.
Absolutely.
Right. So once we create that ownership of these fields, it's gonna move into academies. And again, we don't want just academies that just talks about baseball, right? We want actual academies, a spinoff of something like IMG, man, for minorities, where we can really cultivate the educational piece, right? I think we get off the educational piece. You got to be smart to play this game of baseball, man, and to continue to grow, man. So we want to make sure we touch kids early.
And you got to be really smart to do what you're doing. And what I mean by that is you're talking about baseball and you're talking about, the systems and operations that you're putting in. You're talking about the fundamentals. But what you're doing also leans heavily into the world of entrepreneurship. It leans heavily into the world of the startup company, right? That's got to go out and do the things that a startup does and an entrepreneur does and all the things that we read about. Have you always had that kind of mentality, a startup mentality, and entrepreneurship mentality?
Man, I just always been a dog, right? I always been 5'9", man. You know when you're not a tall guy, you gotta
Hey,
get
look,
it.
I'm 5'5", so we good.
Right? You know what I mean? And I played every sport, right? I
Right.
was a big time football also, and I got an older brother, and all my best friend is the NFL. So all my friends were the best people on their respective teams in my city, man. So everybody was competitive at a young age, man. So, that just, piles on to my business sense of, again, I don't feel like nobody is bigger than me, right?
That's
Nobody
awesome. That's awesome.
Like I am. And I want to do it my way. I feel like my way is going to work because, God put me on this planet, man, to be a teacher, for 13 years, man. I got a lot of, stuff in my head that I see that every day that I know that needs to be changed that we don't really see as ordinary people.
When you talk about Black communities in baseball, you mentioned the fundamentals as kind of the biggest challenges and biggest barriers. But when we talk about perception, there's that perception and that narrative that I know you probably can directly rebuff, in the sense that people will say, oh, black people aren't checking for baseball. I know you've
Sure.
gone all over the country and seen young black people playing baseball. So
Sure.
what is the biggest challenge we have to face that narrative, right? I mean, obviously basketball and football have culture in a way because they also have media in a way that baseball doesn't have. And I always give
Sure.
media, one of the things that's really important for the Black Baseball Mixtape is to represent black baseball in a space where, like you said, all the kids today are on podcasts or on their phones and they're looking at highlights. And I always feel like baseball media needs to do a better job at highlighting black culture and our players and our abilities and our swag and our influence on the game. But how do you, when people say, oh, coach, you've been a baseball man, people, baseball ain't checking for us. What's your rebuttal to that as a narrative?
Man, like you say, when we go around everywhere to see kids love the game of baseball. When you think about baseball, most of the time, every kid, black, white, or purple, their first sport is what? Baseball,
Mm,
right? They fall in love with T-ball at the youngest ages of 4 or 5. Um, we just got to keep that baseball in their hands. Like you said, my biggest thing, if you see on our social media and how we grow so fast, my biggest thing is social media,
mm,
right? It's just, again, for me having kids and me being a teacher, social media is the biggest thing out right now that kids watch, right? So our goal is to keep it in their face. A kid, not a non-baseball kid, can't really tell you a black baseball player in the major league,
mm.
right? But they can tell you a girl or a guy that don't play basketball can tell you that LeBron James play in the NBA,
Yeah,
right? Or Patrick Mahomes or something like
yeah,
that. How can we change that without, um, getting it more visual, right? In commercials, like Tim Anderson is a killer, man. One of the best players, man, the last 5, 10 years,
right.
and I can't find a commercial with him, right?
He did a Dairy Queen
So
commercial last year, but
for sure, for sure,
but he doesn't have. When I was growing up, I had Griffey and Nike. I had Bo
yeah,
Jackson. I had Dion. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That
yeah.
idea of putting that investment in baseball, I don't think we've actually had that in a media investment in baseball to the likes where I'm used to since Jeter. Jeter was the last one
Yep.
that, and
Yep.
we have Tim Anderson and we have Mookie Betts and we have quite a few Byron Bucks and we have players at the
Yep.
top that are
Yep.
doing amazing work. But then we have players like the one you mentioned earlier, Taj Bradley, who, I mean, from my mouth to God's ears, but surefire major leaguer, I think this season just has to be.
Yeah, for sure.
He can't do anymore.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
when you see what excites you when you see the Tajas of the world, you see, players like Jordan Walker or Mason Wynn, or you see the young guns that are knocking on the door to really be in the major leagues. What excites you about that?
The great thing about it, a lot of these guys that, I got a chance to see them. I'm old enough now, man, that I've seen them, at a younger age and got a chance to see them grow. The minor league process is rigorous. The draft process is rigorous. Getting drafted out of high school or going to college and getting drafted, all of that is a tough process, man. But to see those guys, be successful, the Michael Harris's of the world,
Yep.
to see these guys be successful, man, is so promising, man. For me, and it's a lot that's coming behind them. It's
Mm,
just that we really just got to continue to grow it, and they got to know the Todd Bradley story,
mm.
right? That Todd Bradley didn't want to pitch; he hated me for pitching, right? He'll tell you to this day he thought he was a two-way guy.
All right.
I said, Todd, you a big kid, not a good runner, not power. You got a good bat to ball skills, but you got a plus arm and a plus body that's gonna grow, and you're gonna be the young kid in the draft. You better pitch, or you're not gonna play,
Mm,
right? And what I've learned, um, Clarence John, talks about this all the time, man. Is that you put the right people around these guys, and that they're gonna breed success,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's what I feel about minority baseball prospects. And Reading High School what isn't special. It's just that you had great coaches and people around that supported these guys' dream and put them in the right place at the right time. And that's what we're trying to do with minority baseball prospects. Go around the world and get these guys, just say it's a Kurt Dozier in Detroit, right? Great dude. What we do now is go to him, give him all the resources, all the knowledge, and all the media to make sure he's successful. Because again, when we leave, that's what I try to get people to understand. Minority baseball prospects is big, but when we leave, they're gonna tether back to Kurt because Kurt with them every day. So
Right.
how can we give him power to make sure he's successful when we leave, right? And if we do that around the country and give these guys everything they need, it's gonna grow the game of baseball.
Teach a man to fish, right?
For sure.
Coach, let me switch gears and ask you a little bit about some fun things that I always like to ask guests about, a little bit more insight into your background and your career. You mentioned that you were a player. Tell me about your baseball career. How'd it go for you?
Man, it went well. Like I say, coming high school, man, with a 4-star athlete. I played football, man, had 10 picks my senior year, played basketball, ran track, broke my school batting average record with 521, and didn't really have any place to really play, going
That's
out of high school,
crazy.
man. Yeah, end up, Macon. I'm from Macon, Georgia. Macon
Mm.
is a basketball town, and my Boys and Girls Club leader, man, Mr. Hatcher, he took me to a walk-on tryout actually with Albany State, man. I got a full ride to Albany State,
Oh, that's great.
which was, my first CU life, right? And end up, being freshman of the year, all conference at Albany, and said, hey, man, I finally started to learn the game of baseball, and what to do and things in that manner, not just being athletic. So I went to, JUCO to try to get drafted, um, and end up, going to a Division II Armstrong State after that, where was all conference again, All American, and end up, my senior year leading the nation in stolen bases, with 48 and 48 games. Didn't really get a chance after that, and end up, jumping right into coaching. And 3 years into my coaching as an assistant with baseball and everything else, man, I was the first Black head coach at a school called Griffin High School, where Tim Beckham was the #1 pick overall in
Mm.
2008. And I had my first year as a head coach, first Black head coach at Griffin High School. Um, I had the #10 pick overall, man, for the Phillies, man, Cornelius Randolph.
Mm.
So man, I was blessed on my journey. God wanted me to coach, man. He didn't want me to play pro ball. He wanted me to really get into the coaching realm. Had to be, man. I was too successful every stop that I went in my playing venture, not to get drafted. But it really just pushed me to say, hey, it was a plus running kid. I was a plus runner. Had a good bat. Batted 375. I always had above 5 home runs and had a plus arm, and I didn't get a chance because I didn't understand the space,
Right.
right? I didn't know you can get drafted out of high school. I was a football, basketball guy.
Right.
So if it could happen to me, I know it can happen to anybody. So that, again, is another reason why it really pushed me for minority baseball prospects to go around the country and, find these hidden gems. If you look at our games, you're going to have the Tamar and Drews, but you're going to have a lot of middle guys that we found that are diamonds in the rough that just needed that platform, to flourish, man, like a Chandler Pollard,
Mm.
who got drafted last year, man, who rose out of nowhere, man, like a Todd Bradley, you know what I mean, who rose out of nowhere. That's our goal, man, just to touch everybody.
Who were your players growing up? Who are the players that you like to watch, emulate your game after?
My favorite player, man, I didn't pull a ball, man. I might have pulled one ball in college, man, and had 7, 8 home runs. I was a middle. They're gonna tell you how my mind was thinking. I was a gap middle away, man. Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter was my favorite guy, man. Oh, captain, man. He just played the game the right way. And him and Tony Gwynn, man, just reading his hitting books, man. And I was obsessed, man, with being great, if that makes sense, man. So I always loved guys who was obsessed with being great, man. It takes a lot to be great, especially in baseball. Takes a lot of time, man. So I always valued those guys who took that time to be great, man.
If you could face any pitcher, living or dead, who do you face and why?
Oh man, I gotta face somebody I can hit. You know, give me a give me somebody in the minor leagues. I ain't trying
Come
to,
on,
you know, what I mean,
come on, coach.
now if it were one arm, uh, it would have to be somebody like a Satchel Paige, man. I want to see was he really like that. I want to face him in his older years.
Mm-hmm.
I want to face him when he was a young deer man throwing 100, man. But I would love to, to clash that new school to old school, man, just to see it, man. I know those guys what they went through to play the game is just so crazy, man. I just know those guys would, be successful now just because of their will, back in those days. So I love to face those type of guys. And I was a speed guy, man. I would love to race Cool Papa Bell if I had opportunity.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I think I know the answer to this one, but it might surprise me. If you had a choice between being, I'm going to give you three choices: an
Okay.
on-field manager of a Major
Yeah.
League Baseball team,
Okay.
the general manager of a Major League Baseball team, or commissioner of baseball. Which one do you choose?
Uh, it got to be the commissioner, man. I got to
See,
be that guy
I
who can
thought,
keep.
see, now because of what you're doing now, I'm thinking you're leaning commissioner, but
Yeah.
I mean, coach and GM, those are
Yeah.
different missions.
It is, man. I want to be able to control it all, man. I guess when I say something, I wanted to be able to disperse down, man. So
But the
I
commissioner
was,
doesn't really control what's on the field, right?
I
That's
agree.
he's
I
the
agree.
commissioner has to he's a client to the owners, right? So you got to do the owners, you got to do the sponsors, you got to do the TV deals, or
Yeah,
but if you're, it's different. It's a different task.
yeah. I want to have the control, man.
Right.
Even with the GM, you still got to look over your shoulder a little bit, man. The commissioner kind of, he just kind of answers to the owners, and he has a good say so on how things are run or how things are ran, man. So that's my
That's
type of
awesome.
that's my type of speed.
Coach, if you could change one thing about the game, what would you change?
Uh, I think the game got to be shorter a little bit, and just a little bit more excitement. Uh, and, it's nothing like going to a game,
Right.
right? The
Right.
game. I think the game experience is great, but how do we translate that experience to TV? I think that's the biggest thing I want to see. How can we change it if the time? Um, is it the excitement? I know they're getting away from the shifts. When I was growing up, man, that was the steroid era,
Right.
right? Everybody was leaning on Barry Bonds and McGuire and
Yeah.
Sammy Sosa. How do we get
Chicks
back
dig
to
long
those
ball.
days? Yeah, man. How do we get back to those days of excitement and everybody loving the game? And again, I just think the big thing is recognition of the players. Nobody can, unless you're a baseball guru, nobody can tell you more than two players on the team, man. So, how do we promote these players at the highest level?
The one thing I've learned, I'm talking to a lot of young players, like a lot of players that are either first, second level in the minor leagues, a lot of the high school players as well, college players. The one thing I'm learning, and this kind of was my age group as well, but MLB The Show does more for them to know who the players are.
Sure.
They know who the players are based off of who's on their video game teams. And
I agree.
maybe a couple of them, it's not even a young man's hobby anymore, but a couple of them may have a couple baseball cards. But I will tell you this: the announcement earlier, I want to say last week, about the Negro League players being in, certain Negro League players being in the video game MLB The Show is going to introduce a whole lot of young people to, like you mentioned, Cool Papa Bell or Satchel Paige or folks that they didn't even know played in the Negro Leagues. I do think, like you were saying about social media, things like things like what's happening on Instagram and TikTok, and what's happening on things like MLB The Show. And I think the delivery methods in media have to be a little bit stronger that appeal to our culture. I think basketball and football have figured some of that out, and I think it's almost at the behest of the actual organizations. And what I mean by that is corporations are always later than what's happening on the ground. You know that. You've been on the ground, you've been doing things. People will find you years after you're doing what you're doing. I think
Sure.
people cut up those highlights, right? They start doing those commentaries. They made it awesome. And then you go around and look at the Super Bowl, and now you start to see like corporations or the NBA All-Star game. They'll pick up on it, but they'll pick up on it after you've already been on the ground laying the groundwork.
No, for sure, man. I think we have something coming along that that's going to really impact the youth. Me having kids, understanding that kids love cartoons.
Yep.
Our animation, our mascot Swaggy, who is really dope. Um, we're gonna really use that to tap into the kids, man, and get them to really learn their history, man. You think about Swaggy, decked out guy that looked like Tim Anderson, is already appealing to the young kids. But, think about a cartoon where, Swaggy's chain, when he puts on his chain, he turns into a cool Papa Bell or Satchel Paige and kind of get a chance to tell that story, right? We understand that kids love cartoons and love to be entertained, man. And Swaggy might be able to make a song, you know what I mean? But we got a lot of things in the works to touch these kids and touch the masses. Just like our HBCU game, we don't just do the game just to do it, right? We trying to get butts in seats, right? Bring back black fans, like y'all seen you said on the post. How
Yep.
do we bring back black fans? We had 5,000 fans at our HBCU game last year at the Brave Stadium.
That's
This year
amazing.
we shoot for 10, 12. We want to do that at every event, but you got a mind play sometimes with black people to get them to love the game again. So we
Yep.
did vendors. We had vendors. This year we're gonna have the homecoming field. So we're gonna have a scroll off. We're gonna have all this stuff on the outside to bring them inside to get a chance to see the home run derby. Fastest HBCU player in the country. You're gonna get a chance to see that. Then you're gonna get a chance to see a great game and a party atmosphere. So, you know, we're trying to change the game, man. Back to when the Negro Leagues, man, it was a party when you went to those games, man. That's the same thing we're trying to do everywhere we go.
Coach, I love it. I love it. I love it. I wish you the absolute most success as you continue on. I know that you'd mentioned, and I can see it. The growth is leaps and bounds every day, every week, every month, every year. And it is amazing to see what you're doing. So I wish you the very, very best of luck. Tell everybody where they can follow you, and make sure that they're following the prospects.
Yeah, man. Every minority, every person in the world should be following minority baseball. We're the best
Absolutely.
out right now. On social media, it's at MVP Takeover. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Our website is minoritybaseball.com. About 3 months, every player be able to create their own profile, and upload your own videos, man. You own, the biggest platform in the world. You be on recruiting tool, man. So make sure you follow us, support us, man. And if you're a stud, man, you send us some video, we'll post it.
Even if you're not a stud, because people need to be found. People need to be
Yeah, yeah,
found.
yeah. For sure, for sure,
So
for sure,
last thing,
for sure.
coach, who you? I see you guys out, man. I see you guys outside. Y'all are doing the thing. Y'all are pounding the pavement. Since you've been doing this? Who's the most surprising? I won't say coolest, but who's the most surprising person that you've run into, that you've met, and they looked at you and said, "I see what you're doing, coach. Keep going."
Man, probably one of the best pitchers I ever seen. CC Sabathia.
Yeah,
He,
dope,
he was bigger.
dope.
He was bigger than life. What I mean? When you was young, you see a big black pitcher. He had the swag, man. What I
Yep.
mean? Playing for one of my favorite teams, the Yankees. Man, he was so cool. And then, now we're friends and, we meet all the time, man. He just good people.
Dope.
And that's one thing you'll learn about minority baseball prospects. Anybody you see us around and we really hang with, man, they're good people. So, we love good people.
Coach, I'm going to leave it there. I wish you the best of luck. Man, make sure you follow what Coach is doing, Coach Wyche is doing, what they're doing with minority baseball prospects, and now what they're doing with minority softball prospects as well. It is an amazing operation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Black Baseball Mixtape. We see it.